episode 28 of my crafting podcast. This is my fortnightly vlog about knitting, crochet, spinning, dyeing, sewing, anything else that seems like a good idea at the time. I'm coming to you from North Yorkshire in the north of England, where I live with my husband, our 3 daughters and 2 cats. You can find me on social media. On Instagram, I'm Mel Brown Crafting Podcast. I also have an Instagram for my business, which is Creative Escape Retreats. And you can find me on Ravelry as Funky40. And there's a Ravelry group for this podcast that you can have a look at. That's actually where the show notes are. So if there's anything I say today that you're interested in, you want to find out more about patterns, people, places, whatever, just click on the link down below here. And that will take you across to Ravelry, where there'll be clickable links for everything, and also you can respond there with a comment, a chat, or you can respond with a comment here as well, whatever you like. So that's the intro. It is spring here. It's mid-March. No, it's the end of March nearly, yes, everything's happening. All the flowers are coming out, and it's just really beautiful here. The lights a bit better, I think. Okay, let's crack on. Let's start off with, where are they now? What's happened to the projects you've seen before? So, number 1, the memory blanket. Nothing done on that this time, so I won't bother showing you that. Number 2 is Janelle. Now, this is, do you know, there it is. This is from this book, Dora Orenstein book, which I love. It's the first project I've made from it, and it's finished. So I have worn it pretty much every day since I finished it, so it's not looking pristine and new. I've just found yesterday there's a couple of ends I didn't run in. I actually meant to run them in before I started this. Oops. See if you can spot them. So here it is. That's the sleeve and the back, and what's that? Oh, it's a little feather, don't know. And you can see that the bottom is a little bit curled. I had a go at crocheting on the ribbon yarn, tensile tape, that I spoke about last time. It didn't change it. It didn't change anything about the curling. It's still curled at the bottom and at the front. So here it still kind of curls. Didn't stop that. But it was very difficult to work out, you know, 1 stitch per row thing. Well, that's no good with this, because this is 1 row. This whole thing is 1 row. So I was kind of putting a stitch in here and a stitch in there and a stitch in there, and it was just getting a little bit puckered. And it just also, because it was blue and green, it went beautifully at this end of the cardigan. But once I started going up to this end, it started looking wrong, and I didn't like it, so I pulled it out. Actually, I think it's fine as it is. If you think of it, a cardigan as being something like this that you button up and comes across the chest as well as the back and the arms, then it's not doing that job. But what it is doing is it's sitting beautifully, covering my arms and my back of my neck. And it keeps me warm, and it's beautiful. So I'm not actually worried about any of that stuff. So I'm very, very, very happy with it. I'm not sure if I put a finished object picture on my project page on Ravelry. I'll normally get around to it. There's a couple of issues with it which are not down to the pattern at all. There's things like this underarm, there's a hole. And because I just carried on crocheting until I ran out of yarn each time, I haven't got any little ends left for sorting these things out. The underarm is not tidy. The seam here, it doesn't look too bad, but the way it's joined, I couldn't get the hang of the way you do that. So it doesn't look particularly good. But it's under the arm, and it's the kind of top, the jumper that's so bright and, you know, kind of takes you back, that you're not really looking for problems with it. I'm not anyway. I've never, I think I did 1 perfect project in my knitting career. Didn't make any mistakes. There was nothing that I bodged, and it wasn't that great. I'm not too worried about it. When I got to the end, I finished with one more row of this on one sleeve, and because I was using a ball for each sleeve, I assumed I'd be okay with the other one, but it wasn't exactly the same. I think the decrease is maybe a little bit haphazard, and it wasn't exactly the same. So when I came to finish this last row, I had 3 stitches to go, but they were the tall ones, the linked double trebles, and I ran out of yarn. So I hadn't tied off the end of the other sleeve, so I started crocheting with that end, and I did get right to be able to join it, but there was literally ½ centimetre between the two, so I wouldn't have had an end to run in. So I thought, I've either got to buy another ball of that colour for 6-10 centimetres of yarn, or just cut it and have this tiny end, which I thought, after all this work, I don't want it unravelling on me. So I decided in the end to rip back that last round on both of them and join the lilac colour and just do the last round in the lilac. And in fact, that worked absolutely fine. I quite like it. It's got this last little cuff thing on it. So yeah, so I've got I've got the rest of the lilac left, a small amount of this, and when I stopped on the blue again, the light blue, I've got a little bit of that left, so that'll probably become a dishcloth, washcloth, something like that. I'm just noticing that it almost looks like it's been ironed, the way it bends over like that, but it doesn't at this end. That's really weird. Anyway, so it's beautiful. I love it. It stops traffic, everybody notices it, and it's very, very me. So that's Janelle. I used the standard hook and Shapius toner, little 25-gram balls, 2 of each colour. It's all on the Ravelry project page. You can see all the colours there, and the recommended hook. I'm pretty confident. I keep saying this, but I'm not sure now. Anyway, you'll see it on the Ravelry page because I always update that. So the other thing about this is it collects bits of fluff, and having 2 cats and a fibre obsession, there's always bits of fluff around for it to grab. That's a bit annoying. I don't think it's bobbling from the actual fibre itself because it's not the right colour. But anyway, there we go. Very happy. Right, next item you've seen before. I made the Quaker Yarn Stretcher Boomerang by Susan Ashton. Put it up here. It's a pattern designed for hand spun, and I did my first one with my first hand spun, and it's beautiful. I wear it such a lot. And I made my second one for my friend Andrea in some yarn that I spun from fibre that she gave me, which was alpaca and silk and merino. It's beautiful. So my daughter, my youngest daughter Belle, she does spinning and yarn dyeing and things with me, and we had a lovely weekend dyeing fibre. You people who've watched before, my friend told me to not call you long sufferers. Sorry, I won't do that anymore. You people who've watched a lot before will know that will have seen all of that. So we dyed some fibre together, and I started a third yarn stretcher boomerang in the fibre that she had dyed and then spun. Now it's quite a rough fibre, and the spinning is quite rough, but here it is. There's not much more on since last time you saw it. So yeah, this is the new stuff. So it's really, really open fabric. I'm using 10mm needles because although sometimes the yarn is quite thin, it also gets in places quite thick. So it's just open. It's just going to be a long thin scarf for her, really. Yeah, it's not itchy, but it's quite rough. So there it is. Not much progress done on that, to be honest. I'm not really focusing on it. I don't know why. The first bit of yarn I got from her, I just knitted it up straight away. This second ball I haven't been so keen. I think I need to finish that off, and then she'll have encouragement to spin some more, which would be good. I'm looking over at the spinning wheel in case you're wondering. I don't know why I do that. Sort of gesture. Oh, over here, the spinning wheel. You can't see it. Right, so that's my third yarn stretcher whatnot. And that's a work in progress. What else? Next is the Havana shawl. So this is a pattern by Tina. Sorry, the cat's coming on. I don't want him sitting on that. Come on, stop. He's going to hover part in frame and part out. There he is. That's Clyde. He's our old man. He's lovely. Can you hear him purring? Bless him. Right, so the Havana shawl. I had to go at pronouncing her name there and bottled it in the end. So it is a pattern using a technique called mosaic crochet, which is a very impressive looking but very easy to do technique. So let me show it to you. It is, I'm using black yarn, which I don't usually buy and I very, very rarely use, but it just kind of makes the colours pop. So, started out this first section with black and one particular rainbow yarn, and then went to the second section with black and a different rainbow yarn, and I knew I didn't have enough black to do the whole project. I've gone on to this green wool. Do you remember that? Is it long? No, not long suffer. Sorry. What's the word? You people who've watched a lot before, you mad beasts. This green, it's the grass from the flowers, garden flowers. Is what was left of that. So there's that and some grey double knit that I had kicking about. So that's a nice contrast as well. So I'm on the third section. It's really interesting. If you look close up, you can see how it's done. You're doing a row of single crochets, a UK double crochets, and then you slot in suddenly a double crochet or a UK treble in the row below. So it makes a kind of line. It looks like colour work. It's really impressive, isn't it? But it's not colour work. It's very, very simple. You're only using one colour in each row. And what you actually do is you start at this end and you use that colour all the way across. You cut the yarn at the other end and you start again at this end with the other colour. So you always start at this end and always finish at this end, which means there's lots of ends. But isn't it pretty? There's no ends, because what you do is you crochet over. So as you start with a new colour, you crochet over your end as you go, and then when you get to the other end, you crochet over the end of the previous row. So at the end of the project, there should be just one end left to run in, which is this one here. And then what you do is you snip any leftovers, so that one's been run in, so it's been run in behind several stitches there. You see, and then I'll just snip that off. So that's the way you manage the fact that there's a hell of a lot of ends, but it's beautiful, isn't it? I started off with a 4mm hook and I've gone up to a 5. I guess I could really actually go up to a 6 because it doesn't have much drape, but it's acrylic mostly. I suspect the green is the only thing that isn't acrylic. Don't know. But yeah, so it's not going to block, it's not going to necessarily have an awful lot of drape, but it's fine. I love it. It's just so beautiful, isn't it? Sorry. So that's going really well. I'm loving it. I'm doing that as a knit along, a crochet along with my friend in Kansas. So that's something she found the tutorial for. I put the link to the tutorial in last week's show notes, so I'll probably put it in again this time. But it's really, really simple technique. Don't be put off by how fancy it looks. If you fancy having a go, just give it a go. It's really, really simple. The tutorial is brilliant. Okay, so that is work in progress number 3. So that's all of the Where Are They Nows. Let's go on to new whips on the block. So last time I had started chevron shenanigans, no, brioche chevron wrap, a Stephen West pattern, and I had got a couple of inches into the brioche, which I love the feel of, but I was starting to feel that it was going to be death by brioche, and I made a mistake in an increase, tried to frog it back, made a mess. just ripped out the whole thing, decided it wasn't for me. Then my friend Kathy in New England decided with me that we were going to do a brioche along. So I put a thread on. There's somebody else who's interested in taking part as well. If you fancy taking part, please do. The idea is you just choose a project that's got some brioche on it. It doesn't have to be all brioche. It doesn't matter what it is. Just choose any pattern that's got some brioche in it and come along and play. So post in the thread, say what you're going to do. Don't have to have started yet, whatever you fancy. It doesn't matter when you start, doesn't matter what it is. Just post in there and keep us up to date. Pictures and whatever. It's fun. And that's it really. That's all the brioche along is. And then when you put photos on social media or whatever, tag it, hashtag brioche along. Right, so I started Exploration Station, which has some short rows, some brioche, some slip stitch and some garter stitch and all kinds of stuff. So it's quite a big project. So I started that with some of the same yarns that I was using for the brioche chevron. It's a bit funny he's going with the lights. But some different ones as well. So I've got 4 yarns. I've got the first one, this purple is Madeleine Tosh Light. I'm just going to try and find all the ball bands for you so that you can see. This is the purple one, Tosh Light. And then there's this beautiful teal. That is Easy Knits Twinkle. And then there's a plain teal, which is West Yorkshire Spinners Signature 4-ply. And then there's a kind of tonal purple. This one here, which I dyed myself. It's just a bare fingering yarn that I bought from Yarndale and dyed myself. So 4 different colours, and is that the right side? Yeah, so there it is so far. So you can see the short row section at the bottom. It's on a short circular so that I don't have to spend my life pushing needles back, stitches back and forth. So it doesn't show it off very well, but it'll be better when it's done. So we've got the short row section at the bottom here, and we've got these lovely big gaps. I love that way, kind of when you're doing short rows, you've got to find a way of reincorporating the stitches you've worked with the previous ones. And Stephen West just says, sod that, I'll just make great big holes. I love it. Just love it. So there it is, there's the short rows, and then we get onto the brioche, and it's gorgeous and squishy. If it looks a little bit weird, it's because I've got a lifeline in there, because I messed up the brioche on the previous project. I thought, I'm not going to let myself do that again. So I ran a lifeline here before we started the brioche, and then 6 rows in I ran another. And I haven't done one since because I think I've got the hang of it. Having said that, I have messed up a little bit at the edges. I don't know if you've got to see enough, but there's a little bit here that's a bit messed up, but you know what? I'm fine with that. As I said earlier, perfect is not my aim in anything I do. A good enough is. So it's pretty good. It's squishy. It's lovely. I love the contrast. To be honest, I kind of preferred the contrast that I had with brioche chevron, which was with the Easy Knits and the Madeleine Tosh. I prefer that to this, which is the hand dyed with the Easy Knits, but that's okay. You've got to pair lots of different, you've 4 colours, and you've got to pair lots of different partnerships up, so it's absolutely fine. I'm about a couple of double rows, because with brioche you start at one end and you knit all the stitches in the first colour, and then you go back to that end and you knit all the stitches in the other colour, and then you start again at this end and you knit all the stitches in the first colour and you knit them all in the second colour, so it's double rows. I've got 2 more double rows to go on the brioche, and then it's on to the next section. I do love this kind of project where you get to try different things. So the short row is fun, and it's lovely because you don't have to look at the pattern, you just kind of know where you are with it. And then you're just kind of thinking, oh, I'm getting a bit bored of this, and then you get to switch to brioche, and I've just ploughed back and forth the brioche and made a couple of mistakes, had to tink back a row, all that kind of stuff. But now I'm thinking, yeah, I'm ready for something else now, and it's the pattern's there ready for me, so I'm really enjoying this project. And the funny thing is, from what I've had my quick glance ahead of the pattern, the final section of the pattern is actually brioche chevron. So I'm going to get to do that a bit anyway, but instead of 165 stitches I'm probably going to have something like 450, but it's not 80 inches of brioche. So anyway, I'm rambling. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I'm loving the yarns. I'm really enjoying the fact that I've dyed some of this myself, and I think I think it's really difficult to choose yarns, and once you've chosen them, to work out which one's going to be colour A, colour B, whatever, because you have to kind of predict what they're going to look like. But I'm actually really happy with the choice I've made. This dark one is perfect for the lines. I've seen enough patterns, examples of this to know that it's great to have this bit being the dark lines. So yeah, really, really happy with that. So if you fancy joining in brioche along, just take part. Right, there's one more new whip on the block, and that is the socks I'm making in this. I dyed a yarn. It's one of those when we were dyeing other stuff, me and Belle, and there was something left in the dye pot. Now my one of my favourite YouTubers, Rebecca from Chemnitz, she says no dye left behind. She always saves her dye from an experiment and uses it somewhere else. And so when we had some dye left in the dye pot and the fibre we were dyeing didn't want to take any more, I just tend to throw a skein of undyed yarn in. The same stuff that I bought in that big batch from Yarndale. So I had thrown a skein in and it was really pretty, and then again later on I just dunked it in something, just dunked one end in, and it was really beautiful. My second daughter Lexi really, really wanted it. Actually there's a picture of it here in the skein and wound. But I had it earmarked for brioche chevron, and when I decided not to do brioche chevron, I thought, that frees up that yarn, I can use it for Lexi. So I'm in a bit of a mess here. I've got my balls in a tangle. You know, for the exploration station, I've got 4 balls running, and what I decided to do with that, let me just show you, is I put them all, well, most of them, into these. So it's just a little voile, organza bag, and this is coming out, so all of this stuff in here isn't getting messed up like this is. It's all in a mess. So I think I should do that with these as well, actually, because they're getting in a mess. So what I'm doing is 2 at a time socks. I'll sort that out later. 2 at a time socks, but the difference of this to normal is I'm doing them continental knitting. I don't think I showed you this before, did I? So yeah, continental knitting, so I'm holding the yarn in my left hand like you would with crochet, and I'm getting the hang of it. So the gauge is quite poor, the edges probably have a little bit of laddering in them, and it looks like a you know, beginner sock knitter, which is absolutely fine with me. I'm getting the hang of it, and what I really probably could do is trying to discipline myself to do a couple of rows every day, because it's switching techniques. I don't pick it up because I'm obsessed with the exploration station for a start, but because it's kind of a bit of a I've got to do the continental knitting and it's not comfortable yet. So I probably it's when I say it on the podcast it's much more likely to happen, so I'll probably try and do a couple of rounds of that every day. I'm just going with my normal sock pattern. I've got 2.75mm needles. It may be that my tension is different with continental and I may opt for a different standard set of needles, but I've got a cardboard cutout of my daughter's foot, so I just keep increasing every other round, both ends, until it gets to big enough for her, and then I'll keep going, and I'll need to put a line on here where her ankle bone goes to tell me where to start the short row heel, German short row. But yeah, it's just my normal sock pattern, sock recipe, but it's going to be slow progress, but I'm thinking at the end of it I'll have got the hang of continental knitting, and I don't know, maybe I'll switch all my knitting to that, who knows. So that is work in progress number 5. Okay, that's it for the knitting and crochet. Let's move on to some spinning. So last week I had got halfway through, I think, spinning some mustard fibre that was John Arbon knit by numbers. Yeah, colour number 110 mustard. So it is merino, I think. Anyway, it's done. So there it is. I probably showed you the single and the fibre last time, so there's the finished yarn. It's not bad. It's quite balanced. There are definitely some thicker bits and some thinner bits, but you know, that's actually part of the charm of it. When you watch experienced spinners spin, the yarn is very thin and very consistent. And a lot of spinners have said to me that once you get good at it, it's very hard to do the inconsistent stuff, even if you wanted to. And I feel quite strongly that if I want yarn that's even and consistent and whatever, then I'll buy yarn. You know, there's plenty of options available. But if I want to spin yarn, then my whole mechanism for evaluating is completely different. So I like the variation. Well, I have actually paid money for thick and thin yarn in the past anyway, so but I actually embrace and love the variation, but also colours as well. I talked a bit about this last time, that the colours of my hand spun yarn generally tend to be in colours that I would not purchase in yarn if I was just going out to buy yarn, but because they're hand spun, there's a whole new criteria for judging them. It's really weird. I am going to sneeze, so I shall stop the video before I do. Ooh, sorry about that. So, mustard, very, very nice. Very happy with that. And also, I've got something else new. Now this is, do you remember me saying last time that I was going to go to the spinning guild and I was going to take back the wheel that I'd rented, because I now have my own, and I was going to look at renting a blending board. Well, I did, and oh my goodness, here it is. So if you are not a spinner, don't need to switch off. I'll show you what it is. So basically it's a wooden board with little spiky teeth on it. I haven't cleaned it up properly, so there's still bits left in it. Can you see the little spiky teeth? And what you do is you lay fibres on it down like this, and then you can blend a whole load of different colours together, and then you use a couple of dowels or a couple of knitting needles to pull off, wrap it round and make sausage cigar-like things of fibre. I'll put in some pictures here of the rolags, they're called rolags, that I've made this week. So I first of all had a session with Belle, and we both made some, and then I had a session with Gemma B Makes, lives in Leeds, she's another podcaster. I'll put a link to her podcast in my show notes. And then I had another session here on my own, and I'm going to see another friend on the 5th of April, and we're going to have a go with it, basically spreading the fibre love. So the concept is, with something like this, you've got a very solid colour, and that's perfectly appropriate for a lot of projects and a lot of tastes, but sometimes it's nice to have a bit more variation, and you can see from those pictures that there's a lot of variation in the colour. And then how you spin it is you just kind of pull the nose of the rolag at one end, and then you can either spin directly from that, or you can draft it out, pull it out a lot thinner, and then spin from that. That's the idea, and I made my first yarn with this technique, and here it is. So it's actually on the, I filled the blending board up and pulled off 3 rolags, and then I did another session of that with 3 slightly different rolags, and then I actually plied them together. So there's a lot going on there, a lot of different colours, and it just, you know, I'm blue all over, look at me. Blue all over. I'm calling this colourway Dark Waters, There's a track that I listen to a lot at the moment. Who's it by? The Young'uns, a kind of folk a cappella kind of band, and they've got this song called Dark Waters. It's about emigrating to another country and having to swim because you can't afford to pay the smugglers, and Dark Waters, it's a very moving song. Anyway, very, very watery, but also black. I would never use black. I told you that before, didn't I? But Gemma, when I went over to see her, she had some, and I thought with this teal, black and undyed, sort of natural colours, would be beautiful, and it was. We made some those lovely ones for her. Did I put in the picture of the ones I made for her? I'll put in a picture here of the ones we made at Gemma's house. So this is dark water. I've got about 70 something grams of it. As well as the teal and the black and whatever, I also had some fibre that I dyed myself in purple. So it's a mixture of everything. It's blended myself, it's dyed myself, it's spun myself, and it's spun blended with friends and family as well. So it's a lovely, it's one of those things that's like special on so many levels for me, and it's soft as well. It has got some white-faced woodland in it. The undyed is white-faced woodland. I bought a whole load of different fibres from Fibre Hut to try out, and that was one of them. And the fibre I dyed, can't remember what that was. Anyway, there's various different bits and pieces in there. So there we go. Right. There's no sewing to speak of, although I did do, I told you I'd made some bags, and I didn't show them to you. I'm going to show them in a later section, so that's the only sewing. Although I bought the fabric for the trousers for my second daughter, I haven't cut it. I've been a bit scared really to do that. And then something new, the only new thing is this. So it is a beautiful project bag made by Gemma B Makes. So this is a lady called Gemma who's a podcaster, and she's just kind of starting out making things, and she gave me this. The fabric is so cute. It's very much indicative of where I live, because driving to town there's a lot of trees, and in the autumn it's just stunning, and you sometimes once a year, every year or two, I come across a deer on the road in certain patches, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So very apt for me, and it's a really interesting size. Now I make bags, but I've never made one this size or shape before, and it really works. So this is actually where my Havana shawl is. So there's a little pocket in the side here where I'm keeping my scissors, and when I've got, you know, I was telling you I'll run the ends in as I go, snip off the bits that are left, and they're going in there because I give them all to Amanda, who makes wonderful things with them. And then I've got all the yarns that I'm using at the moment in there, and they're all kind of presented. Mine are much more narrow. This is quite wide. It's short and wide. Really works for this kind of project where it's not huge, but you've got more than one ball of yarn. I've got my hook that's tucked, or it was tucked into the pocket as well, and the yarn's all available so I can grab them. It's a really good size. So this is something new for me. I don't tend to buy project bags very much because I tend to just make them, but this is lovely, and it is beautifully finished. So she's going to start making those fairly soon, and then, you know, give it a go. So that's the only thing that is new for me. So on to dyeing. Belle and I have been doing quite a bit of dyeing at the weekends. It's really, really good fun. The thing about using edible dyes and food colouring, that kind of thing, is that we can just disappear into the kitchen, fire up a saucepan full of boiling water, chuck a bit of citric acid in, chuck a bit of dye in, chuck a bit of fibre or a bit of yarn in, and then wash up after ourselves, and we're done in half an hour, and we've had lots of lovely fun, and then we've got something later on to use. So it's really, really good fun for us to do together right now. Excuse me. So last weekend we dyed some fibre. This is Jacob that I got from Fibre Hut. Combed fibre top, white. Well, it was white, it's not anymore. So it's one of the quite a few I got from Fibre Hut to just try out different fibres. And first of all, I just dropped it into some red. So red absorbs quite quickly. The colour particles are quite small, so it absorbs quite quickly. And so I didn't push it in. By the time I'd got it all in, it absorbed more in some places than others, which was what I wanted. And then I dipped the skein into some purple. And that kind of dyed it. So it was in a braid when I did it, so it's still in a braid now. So there it is. It's quite interesting in that the braid was fairly loose, but even so, you can see the bits here where it was inside the braid, where the red has managed to penetrate, but the purple hasn't. I can undo it a little bit and show you. So it's very mottled. I haven't a clue how that's going to come out when I spin it, and I don't know exactly how I'll spin it either. I am so new to this spinning lark, and it is really interesting because I've been chatting to a lovely lady on called Alison C. Oh damn it, what's her Revelry Instagram name? C something spins. Anyway, she's in Canberra, Australia. I'll put her up here. And she's done a lot of spinning, and she's just starting to dye for spinning. So we've been having a great chat about how you take this and make that into a yarn. Do you just like randomly pick bits out of it, or do you put all the white bits together and make it a slow colour change? Or do you split the fibre down the middle and then spin all to one end and all the other so it becomes a repeating pattern? What do you do? So it's a really, when it comes to colour and dyeing fibre, it's so fascinating. Dyeing yarn is great. I mean, you dye it and then you've got to see how that colour plays out in the sock or the shawl or whatever. But this is even more fun because you've got how the colour takes on the fibre. Who knows how it's actually going to take. And then how you take that and translate it into the single, the first thread that you spin, and then what you do with it then. Do you just work with it as a single, or do you, what would normally would happen is you'd ply it with another one, but how do you keep the colours clear? If it goes red, purple, white, we apply it with something that goes purple, white, red, it's going to be it's going to have a barbershop pole, marl type thing here, or it could you could apply it to itself, so that you still keep the colours the same way, but the bursts of colour will be shorter. So you've got, say, 2 meters of yarn, and then you apply it 3 times. It's going to be a third of that length, isn't it? So yeah, and then you've got your yarn, and then how does that play out in the thing you knit or crochet with it? It's fascinating. I love it. But here is my braid. So what should I call this colourway? I like giving colourways a name. It's fun. Give me some ideas. What would you call this colourway? And then, as before, I haven't done any deliberate yarn dyeing for a while. I've just kind of responded to what's available. And last week I showed you a blue and white skein. I'll show you here. That I just threw into the pot when there was some blue, and it was dry, so it just slowly sunk in. And that's how you got the variation between the bright blues, the light blues and the white. Some bits didn't even make it into the water. So this week, after I dyed this skein, there was still some red left. So I dipped that skein into the red. I got this. So it's, I guess there's some purple as well, red, white and blue. It feels very patriotic, but also, as my friend Amy points out, it's me gone full circle. I'm come back to black, blue and reds, because whatever I dye, I seem to end up with blue and reds. I don't seem to be able to do anything different. I don't mind. I mean, you know, hey ho, that's who I am. So it's a funny thing, red all the way out there. What's that? Let's get it out and have a look at the skein. That's really interesting. There's a red piece running through there. Can you see that? How on earth did that happen? It must have been hanging loose at some point. peculiar. Maybe it belongs the other side. I don't know. Anyway, there's this one random bit here. And then, yeah, so dipped this bit in like that. And where it was white, it's picked up the red. Where it was blue, it's gone purple. And then it's slowly slunk up a little bit. So that's, I think it's beautiful. I wouldn't buy this skein again because I don't know how that's going to play out. If it's sock yarn, so if I'd knit it into a sock, how will those red patches go? How often will they appear? Will they appear in every row? In every other row? Will it just be a mixed mash of whatever? I'm not particularly keen on that. I prefer stripes. So I haven't a clue how that's going to come out. But it's there. So red, white and blue. Don't know. Red, white and purple. Can't think of a colour name for that either right now. Got any ideas on either of those? Then just pop a comment below. Okay. And finally, some blue left, so I dropped another skein in. This is the kind of subtle dyeing that people often do and people often buy. I wouldn't, but that's okay because it's something just like this that ended up in the my exploration station, that variegated purple. That was just like this. So it is really pretty, it's really subtle, and for me it's just a byproduct of more vibrant dyeing. And probably, like this fella, what I will do is I will over dye it again with something else. You might be screaming at me, no Mel, less is more, keep it as it is. Well, it's possible, but probably when something else comes up I will either drop this in again, or I'll dip it, or I'll do something, because this is a little bit too conservative for me. So there we go. So that's my dyeing. Right, what's next? Creative escape. We have a retreat starting next week. In fact, this time next week I will be on retreat. So we're at the Cairn Hotel in Harrogate. We've got a 3-day retreat. There's about 7 of them in total. Not all coming, not all staying over, not all there every day. But it's going to be absolutely lovely. And this week last week I got the retreat yarn come. So what this is as part of the retreat, I give every guest a skein of custom dyed, unrepeatable colourway yarn for them to use any way they like. And this time I have gone with Claire Nettleship, and this is the yarn. Now, if you've seen my logo, just wonder if I can put that in here, you'll see how perfect those colours are. They're just bang on. And it looks like a chaos yarn, but it's actually self-striping. So, I think I probably need to wind a skein of this into balls, and then I can cast on during the retreat when we're sitting around relaxing. I'll cast on a pair of socks. So I particularly love that tealy colour. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So it's 6 colours and it's quite a long repeat. There are a couple of options, and the thin stripes are lovely, but I actually prefer the thicker stripes, so it was a bit of a pain in the neck for her to dye them for me. Sorry Claire, but thank you so much. So Claire is based in Yorkshire. She's in South Yorkshire, so she's a local indie dyer, just getting started really. She's coming along to the retreat to do us a pop-up shop as well. So that's just beautiful. I think I'm going to do a geek sock. You know the slip stitch sock I did last year? It's kind of like that, but just a bit more so. I love slip stitches with self-striping. In fact, my ideal sock is basically self-striping yarn, a slip stitch pattern, and rather than that, just stocking stitch. It's so lovely to do, and it's so lovely to look at, and it just celebrates the colours that you've got. So I made a right dog's dinner of that skein. Claire, you're a lot better than me at it. Look at that. Anyway, so this is standard sock yarn. So everybody who comes on the retreat is going to get one of those. So yeah, very, very happy with that. And I was going to show you that sewing now. I'm trying to put this Oh, it's not too bad, is it? The other giveaways for the retreat, I made these bags. So there's some lovely owl fabric there that I bought for a PE bag for my daughter. That's from Bombay Stores, beautiful place in Bradford. That's from the Cone Exchange, wonderful secondhand craft shop. And then I've got 3 more that are just more or less a repeat of that. Oh, that's some cotton I actually bought from the Remnant House in Harrogate. And some sheets from Cone Exchange. And then finally, sorry about the crinkling, I've made everybody one of these. Oh, macrame key rings. One of the things that we might do, we've got quite a quiet day on the Wednesday. We have workshops every morning, and in the afternoons we're either going into town to look at the craft shops, or Wednesday afternoon we've got a quiet afternoon, so I'll have the spinning wheel, I'll have drop spindles, I'll have macrame stuff. People will just either get on with their own projects, or we'll teach them something else. I'll teach them something else. I've got eyeliner all down my face again, sorry. And just, you know, relax and just craft together. So that's all the gifts, the giveaways for the retreat all sorted. So I am ready to go. Very, very excited. So the other thing with Creative Escape, I am doing a couple of learn to crochet days in Harrogate, and they're in May. I'm also doing an introduction to spinning. It's a very short, just a 2-hour session in Knaresborough, painting pots, and it's just going to be an opportunity to get your hands on some fibre, have an idea of how you draft, how it works, how you spin it, get your hands on a drop spindle, play with that, just make a little bit of yarn, just get started, and then you can take all of that home with you and use YouTube to help you to just go a bit further with it. So that's that. And finally, just a bit of personal stuff. My daughter Belle is doing great. She's the one who's been diagnosed with autism recently. We met up with the school yesterday to talk through all the... That was Clyde, by the way, that noise. To talk through all the things that we can do to make life easier for her, which is great. And I have decided this week I'm probably going to get an assessment myself. There's a good chance that I am autistic as well, but it would just be helpful to know. So lots going on that front, and I think that's about it. So thank you for watching, thank you for getting all the way to the end. I will be back again in 2 weeks' time, the other side of the retreat. So have a great fortnight. If you've enjoyed the video, do please click the thumbs up. No, that's not what I meant to say. Click the like, that's it. Yeah, that is the thumbs up. Oh, sorry. If you want to see more, then click on subscribe and the little bell, and it'll let you know when there's new ones. If you're interested in anything I've spoken about, click on the link down below. That'll take you across to Ravelry, where you'll see all of the show notes, or you can click through to all the patterns and the people and the podcasts and everything. If you're not already a member on Ravelry, it's very, very simple. You just make up a name, a username, and then make up a password, and it'll send you an email and you confirm, and then you can get on and look at thousands of free patterns and all the show notes and everything you want to. So thank you very much for watching. Have a great 2 weeks. Happy crafting. Bye.